Previously in Part 1, Precious Adeyemi walked away from her wealthy family for a man she believed in, Emeka Osei, a struggling logistics entrepreneur with big dreams. She moved into his small flat, gave him her love, fell pregnant with his child, and in secret, funded his entire business rise through her investment company, Goldvine. As Emeka's success grew, so did his arrogance. He fell into an affair with Yewande Balogun, his powerful boss at Apex Continental, and began treating Precious with cruelty, ignoring her pain, shutting her out, and finally, violently attacking her in a fit of rage. She lost their baby that night, but she did not break. She returned home quiet, patient, and dangerous. Now, the West Africa Freight and Logistics Awards, an event Emeka is attending with Yewande, is about to begin. What Emeka does not know is that the event's headline sponsor and host is Goldvine Investments, and Goldvine belongs to Precious. She arrived in a car he had never seen before. It was a black Mercedes S-Class, long and unhurried, the kind of vehicle that parts a crowd without effort. The driver opened her door and Precious stepped out into the warm Lagos evening in a gown the color of deep wine. Structured at the shoulder, sweeping at the floor, simple enough to be elegant and precise enough to be a statement. She wore no excessive jewelry, just her grandmother's thin gold chain, which she had kept even when she walked away from everything else. She paused for half a breath at the entrance of the Eco Hotel ballroom, took in the assembled industry, the suits, the laughter, the glitter of ambition, and then walked in. Emeka was already inside. She had known he would be. She had seen the RSVP list 3 weeks ago. It crossed her desk as every document connected to this event had crossed her desk, because she had organized every detail of this evening down to the table centerpieces and the order of speeches. He was standing near the bar with Yewande, who wore a red fitted dress and leaned into him with the ease of a woman who believed she had already won. Emeka looked well. That was the thing that might have once stung. He looked well-fed and well-rested and utterly unbothered, as though a woman had not lost a child in his kitchen 3 months ago. Precious looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. Then she looked away. She had work to do. The evening moved the way great evenings do, with apparent ease that conceals enormous effort. Precious moved through the room like water, speaking to partners, greeting sponsors, sharing quiet words with the MC. Those who knew who she was treated her with the particular deference reserved for people who write checks others depend on. Those who did not know her simply felt the gravity of her and assumed she was someone important. They were not wrong. Emeka saw her during the cocktail hour. He almost did not register her at first. His eyes had passed over the woman in the wine gown the way eyes pass over beautiful things they do not expect to belong to their world. Then something snagged. A turn of the head. The angle of a jaw he knew. He blinked. Precious was laughing at something a man in a gray suit had said to her. Laughing with her head tilted back and her hand lightly on his arm, utterly at ease, utterly luminous. Emeka set his glass down very slowly. "Who is that woman?" Yewande asked beside him, her voice carrying the particular sharpness of a woman who has noticed her companion's attention shift. Emeka said nothing, because he did not have an answer that made any sense. The speeches began at 8. The MC, a tall man with a resonant voice, took the stage and welcomed the room. He spoke about the growth of the logistics sector, the new frontiers of West African trade, the partnerships that were shaping the continent's future. Then he said, "This evening would not be possible without the extraordinary support of our headline sponsor, a company that has operated with quiet brilliance for years and has chosen tonight to step fully into the light. Please welcome to the stage the founder and CEO of Goldvine Investments, Ms. Precious Adeyemi." The applause was immediate and warm. Precious walked to the stage with the unhurried grace of someone who had known this moment was coming. She stood at the podium, looked out at the room, and allowed the applause to settle. She did not look for Emeka. She did not need to. She knew exactly where he was. She could feel the temperature of his shock from across the room. She spoke for 7 minutes. She talked about the logistics industry with the fluency of someone who had studied it intimately, because she had. She talked about investment, about belief, about the kind of long-term thinking that builds institutions rather than just businesses. She thanked the room's assembled entrepreneurs for their courage. She never once mentioned Emeka's name. She did not need to. Every person in that room who had dealt with Goldvine in any capacity, and there were several, was already doing the arithmetic. The funding, the capital injection into a certain small logistics startup 18 months ago. The invisible hand that had seeded an empire. When she stepped off the stage, the whispers had already begun. He found her during the dinner break. She was standing near the terrace doors, a glass of water in her hand, speaking with the CEO of one of Nigeria's largest port management companies. Emeka waited, jaw tight, hands doing something uncertain at his sides. When the CEO finally moved away, Emeka stepped forward. Precious. She turned to look at him with the same expression she might turn to look at a mildly interesting piece of furniture. Not cold, not hot, simply registering. Emeka. What? He stopped, restarted. What is this? What are you doing here? I'm hosting the event I organized, she said pleasantly. What are you doing here? He stared at her. The ground beneath his feet had shifted in a way he could not quite compute. He had spent months constructing a version of Precious in his mind, the abandoned woman, the desperate one, the one who needed him more than he needed her. That version was convenient. That version allowed him not to think about what he had done. The woman standing before him in a wine gown, having just addressed 300 industry leaders from a podium, was not that woman. Goldvine, he said slowly. That was you? The investment has always been me, she said. Yes. A long silence. Why didn't you tell me? Precious tilted her head slightly. When would have been the right time, Emeka? Before or after you stopped answering my calls when I was in pain? Before or after you put your fist in my face? She paused. Before or after I lost our child on your kitchen floor? He flinched. Good, she thought. Flinch. She had not planned to do the rest of it that night. The legal processes had already been set in motion weeks prior, quietly, methodically, with the help of a team of solicitors who asked no personal questions and required only her signature and her certainty. The Goldvine funding agreement with Emeka's company contained a standard investor clause. In the event of a material breach of the partnership's ethical conduct provisions, which included, in clear language, conduct injurious to any party associated with the investment, Goldvine retained the right to call in its position with 30 days' notice. She had sent that notice 4 weeks ago. She had also, 3 weeks ago, made a call to the board of Apex Continental. The Adeyemi name, it turned out, still carried weight, even after 5 years of estrangement. And a board that is quietly informed that one of its directors has been conducting a personal relationship with a funded investee of a major partner, creating an undisclosed conflict of interest, tends to act rather quickly. Yewande Balogun had been placed on administrative suspension pending review 2 days ago. Emeka did not yet know this. He had been too busy preparing for this evening. She told him now. She told him simply and without drama, the way you state facts. She told him about the funding withdrawal. She told him about the 30-day wind-down provision. She told him about Apex. She watched his face as each sentence landed. She had wondered, in the weeks of planning, how she would feel in this moment. She had braced for something complicated, satisfaction tangled with grief, victory colored by loss. What she had not expected was this. A deep, quiet sadness. Not for him. For the man she had once believed he could be. For the child she had lost. For the version of herself who had packed 2 bags on a Tuesday night full of hope. She grieved that woman for precisely as long as it took to exhale. Then she straightened her spine and finished what she had come to finish. Precious. Please. His voice had changed entirely. The contempt was gone. The arrogance was gone. What remained was something raw and unguarded that in another lifetime might have moved her. I know I was wrong. I know what I did, I know. But don't do this. The business, everything I've built. You built with my money, she said simply. And you destroyed with your hands. He reached for her arm. She stepped back. Not in fear, but with the practiced calmness of a woman who had decided, in a hospital bed 3 months ago, that no one would ever grab her again. Do not touch me, Emeka. Something in her voice ended the conversation. He stood there, In a room full of people who had just watched her command a podium, surrounded by evidence of everything she was and everything he had thrown away, and he had nothing left to say. She left him standing there. She collected her wrap from the cloakroom. She said goodbye to 3 people she genuinely liked. She walked out of the ballroom, through the hotel lobby with its cool air and its marble floors that reminded her, faintly, of her father's house. A life ago, a different woman ago. The night air outside was warm and thick with the smell of Lagos, ocean and exhaust and possibility. Her driver was waiting. She thanked him. She settled into the back seat. And then, because she had been strong for so many months and strong at the podium and strong while she said the things she needed to say, she allowed herself 30 seconds of being simply human. She closed her eyes. She pressed her fingers to her grandmother's gold chain. She thought of the baby. She let the grief be real for exactly 30 seconds. Then she said to her driver, "Let's go." She did not see the other car until it was too late to stop. The streets near the hotel were the usual Lagos chaos. Vehicles jostling, Okadas threading between lanes, pedestrians who treated the road as an optional boundary. Her driver had pulled carefully out of the hotel exit and was navigating toward the expressway when a slow merge brought them alongside a sleek black car that she brushed. Just barely, just the side mirror catching his, a light metallic graze that nonetheless stopped both vehicles. She stepped out to assess the damage. So did he. He was tall, perhaps 35. Korean, she registered, sharply dressed, with the kind of unhurried composure that came from a life in which minor inconveniences were simply logistics problems to solve rather than catastrophes to perform. He looked at the scratch on his mirror. He looked at the scratch on hers. Then he looked at her. "Are you all right?" he asked. His English was precise, warm at the edges. She blinked. She had been prepared for a confrontation. She had been braced for Lagos energy. Raised voices, blame, the theater of a street dispute. She had not been prepared for quiet, genuine concern. "I'm fine," she said. "I'm sorry about the mirror." "Mirrors are replaceable," he said. A brief pause. "People are not." His name was Joon-ho Park. He was in Lagos on a 6-month business development assignment for a South Korean conglomerate expanding into West African logistics infrastructure. He was, as it turned out, attending the same industry event she had just left. He had stepped out early due to a call and had been returning to collect a colleague. They stood on the street for longer than was strictly necessary to exchange insurance details. When she handed him her card, her real card, Goldvine, her name in clean print, he read it carefully and then looked up at her. "You were the one who spoke tonight," he said. "The opening address." "Yes. It was excellent." He said it without flattery, as a simple statement of assessment. She looked at him for a moment. The warm Lagos night, the quiet after the storm of the evening. This stranger with his careful English and his unremarkable composure and his immediate, instinctive question. "Are you all right?" "Thank you," she said. He smiled, small, unhurried. "I hope the rest of your evening is less eventful." She laughed. It surprised her, the ease of it, the realness of it, after months of performing strength. It was just a laugh, small and unguarded and completely her own. They exchanged contacts for the insurance matter. The insurance matter was resolved within a week, handled by their respective assistants without either of them needing to speak again. But he texted her on the 8th day. Not about the cars. He said, "I have been trying to understand the logistics corridor between Lagos and Abuja and failing completely. I think you might be the only person in this city qualified to explain it to me. Would you have coffee and correct my assumptions?" She read it twice. Then she set the phone down and went back to her work. She picked the phone up again 40 minutes later and typed, "Thursday, 10 a.m. Kraft Gourmet 6. It began slowly. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became a habit. A habit became something neither of them rushed to name. He was not like anyone she had known. He listened more than he spoke. He was curious about everything, about Lagos, about her industry, about her. When she told him, in pieces and over weeks, what she had been through, carefully, without self-pity, the way you disclose things to someone you are deciding whether to trust, he did not offer solutions or platitudes. He simply listened. And then he said, "You are very brave." Not because you survived it, because you decided what you were worth. She had not cried in months. She cried then, quietly, just for a moment, and he handed her his handkerchief and looked out the window to give her privacy without leaving. Her father called 3 months after the awards event. She almost didn't answer. Chief Emeka Adeyemi was not a man who apologized easily. What he said was not quite an apology. It was more of an acknowledgement. He had seen coverage of the Goldvine event. He had read her name in an industry publication. He had, she could tell, been sitting with something difficult for a while. "You did well," he said gruffly. "On your own. You did well. It was not everything, but it was something." She said, "Thank you, Daddy," and meant it. Joon-ho was transferred back to Seoul 14 months after they met. He asked her to come with him. She did not answer immediately. She had learned not to make important decisions in the heat of a moment. She thought for 2 weeks. She consulted herself. Then she went. Not because she was running to something or from something, but because for the first time in her life, she was choosing freely, not out of rebellion, not out of longing, not out of a hunger for something she had been denied. Simply because she wanted to, because he was good, because she had learned, finally, the difference. They were married the following spring in a small ceremony. Lagos first, Seoul second. Her father stood at the Lagos reception and looked at his daughter and did not speak for a long time. Then he said, quietly, so that only she could hear, "This one is worthy of you." Precious smiled. She squeezed his hand. "I know," she said. "I checked." They had 2 children, a girl first, then a boy. Precious continued to build Goldvine, expanding into East Africa and then Southeast Asia, where Joon-ho's networks opened doors and her vision walked through them. She built a life that was entirely, specifically, recognizably hers. She never heard from Emeka again after that night in the hotel. She did not look for him. She did not need the news of his unraveling. She had already moved past the place where his story intersected with hers. She thought of the baby sometimes. She would be quiet for a moment in the middle of an ordinary day, sitting at her desk, watching her daughter sleep, standing at a window above a city, and the grief would arrive, brief and clean, and she would let it pass through her without resistance. You do not forget, but you learn to carry the weight without being crushed by it. That, she had come to understand, was not weakness. That was the truest kind of strength there is. The end. If Precious's story moved you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Like, comment, and let us know what hit hardest. Thank you for reading to the very end. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. Subscribe now because great stories deserve a great audience, and you are exactly that.